The sterile chill of Dr. Albright's office seeped into my bones as I clutched the tissue he offered. Stage 3, he repeated gently, his eyes filled with a professional sympathy that did little to warm the icy dread blooming in my chest. I could barely process the words, the implications echoing in the sudden silence. I need to call Emma, I stammered, reaching for my phone. Emma, my daughter, my rock. Surely, she'd be the first person I'd want by my side. Dr. Albright nodded, his expression softening. Of course, Mrs. Parker. Take your time. Emma answered on the third ring, her voice brisk and businesslike. Mom, is everything all right? I'm in a meeting. My throat tightened. Emma, darling, I just got some news. I'm at the doctor's office. My voice trembled, and I fought to maintain composure. It's cancer. Stage 3. There was a pause, a silence that felt like an eternity. Then, oh, Mom, that's awful. Listen, I really can't talk right now. Julian and I are finalizing the catering contract for the wedding. Can we talk later? The catering contract for her wedding, which was still 6 months away. A bitter taste rose in my mouth. Of course, dear, I managed, my voice barely above a whisper. Let me know when's good. I sat there numb, the doctor's words a dull roar in my ears. Stage 3, cancer, and my daughter, preoccupied with wedding catering. Doctor Albright squeezed my shoulder gently before leaving me to collect myself. I stared blankly at the framed medical diplomas on the wall, each one a testament to years of dedication and care, a stark contrast to the emptiness I felt inside. When I finally composed myself enough to leave, the October air felt crisp and biting, a reflection of the chill that had settled in my heart. The drive home was a blur, the familiar streets seeming alien and distant. I walked into the quiet house, the silence amplifying the news I carried. The house, a testament to years of hard work and saving, now felt vast and empty. I sank onto the sofa, the plush cushions offering no comfort. My thoughts drifted to Emma, to her upcoming wedding, to the future I had envisioned, a future now shrouded in uncertainty. Later that evening, Emma called. Mom, so sorry I couldn't talk earlier. That meeting ran over, she said, her voice still carrying a hint of impatience. So, stage 3. Is that bad? I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath. It's serious. Emma, I'll need surgery. Chemotherapy, it's going to be a long road. There was another pause, shorter this time, but still filled with a chilling lack of warmth. Right. Well, I'm sure you'll be fine. You're strong. Listen, Julian's parents are taking us to the vineyard this weekend for a wine tasting. It's part of the wedding planning, so I probably won't be able to visit until next week. Okay. The vineyard, I echoed, my voice flat. The vineyard, a place we'd always talked about visiting together, a place that held a special significance for us, a shared dream. Yes, Mom, it's important. For the wedding, she reiterated, as if explaining to a child. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Of course, Emma. Have a lovely time. The following weeks blurred into a monotonous cycle of doctor's appointments, scans, and consultations. Each appointment, a stark reminder of Emma's absence. She called sporadically, her conversations brief, and focused mainly on wedding details. The vineyard trip had apparently been a success. the wine selected, the seating chart finalized. I listened patiently, offering words of encouragement and support. My own anxieties and fears pushed deep down. She rarely asked about my treatment, about how I was coping, about the fear that gnawed at me constantly. Her world, it seemed, revolved solely around her upcoming nuptials. One particularly difficult day, after a grueling round of chemotherapy, I found myself staring out the window, watching the leaves fall, each one a symbol of the life slowly draining from me. The phone rang, and I saw Emma's name on the caller ID. Mom, just a quick call. We've decided on the honeymoon destination, the Maldives. Can you believe it? It's so exciting. Her voice bubbled with enthusiasm. I gripped the phone tightly, my knuckles white. That's wonderful. Dear, I managed, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. Listen, Mom, she continued. Julian and I were talking, and well, with the wedding and the honeymoon, we're going to be pretty busy for the next few months. So visits might be difficult. Difficult. The word hung in the air, a sharp, cold shard of reality. I understand, Emma, I said quietly, a new resolve hardening within me, a resolve born not of anger, but of a deep, bone-chilling disappointment. A seed of an idea, a small dark seed, began to take root in the fertile ground of my despair, a seed that whispered of a different kind of future, one where I took control of my own narrative, one where my legacy would not be defined by my daughter's indifference. Enjoy your honeymoon, darling, I said, my voice calm and steady. I'll be fine. Rain lashed against the window pane, blurring the city lights into a hazy, indistinct glow. It was October, and the damp chill seemed to seep into my bones, mirroring the coldness that had settled in my heart. Emma, darling, I have something to tell you, I began, my voice trembling slightly. There was a pause on the other end, a rustle of what I imagined was Julian in the background. Of course, Mom. What is it? She replied, her tone a little too bright, a little too rushed. I took a deep breath. The doctor called it stage 3. Silence. Then a choke gasp. Oh, Mom, I'm so sorry. I'll be there. Just tell me when and where, and I'll be on the next flight. Her words, filled with apparent concern, offered a flicker of warmth in the desolate landscape of my diagnosis. For a brief moment, a fragile hope blossomed within me. Perhaps, just perhaps, this terrible news would bridge the growing distance between us. Emma had been increasingly preoccupied with her own life, her demanding career, her whirlwind romance with Julian, their seemingly endless social engagements. Our phone calls had become shorter, less frequent. My visits to see her, always carefully planned around her busy schedule, often felt more like an obligation than a joy. But now, facing this daunting reality, I clung to the belief that she would be there for me, that the bond between mother and daughter would prevail. The first appointment is next Thursday, I told her, my voice steadier now. It's at the oncology center downtown, around 10 a.m. Thursday. Emma hesitated. Let me check my calendar. Julian and I have it's a work thing, a client dinner, actually. But I'm sure I can reschedule. I'll let you know. A knot of unease tightened in my stomach. A work thing, already all right, sweetheart. I managed, trying to keep the disappointment out of my voice. Just let me know as soon as you can. I need you there. The days that followed were a blur of medical tests and anxious waiting. The rain continued, a relentless soundtrack to my growing fear and loneliness. I tried to keep myself busy, sorting through old photographs, rereading favorite books, anything to distract myself from the gnawing worry. I called Emma several times, leaving increasingly desperate messages. Each unanswered call felt like a small betrayal, chipping away at the fragile hope I had clung to. Finally, 2 days before the appointment, she called back. "Mom, I'm so sorry," she began, her voice laced with what sounded like genuine remorse. "I just can't make it on Thursday. This client dinner is really important. Julian says it could make or break the deal. He's already had to pull some strings to get us a table." I gripped the phone tightly, my knuckles turning white. "But Emma," I pleaded, "this is my first oncology appointment. It's important." "I know, Mom, and I feel terrible," she insisted. "But this is Julian's career we're talking about. You understand, right?" Understanding. My own daughter was prioritizing a client dinner over her mother's first cancer treatment appointment. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. The small flicker of hope I had nurtured, the belief that she would be there for me, finally extinguished. "Of course, dear," I said, my voice hollow. "Your career is important. Don't worry about me." We exchanged a few more perfunctory words, and then the call ended. I sat there, the phone still in my hand, the dial tone buzzing in my ear, feeling utterly alone. The rain continued to fall, the city lights now obscured by a thick blanket of gray. I looked out at the desolate cityscape, a reflection of the emptiness within me. Emma's absence, her casual dismissal of my needs, had left a gaping wound. The diagnosis itself was terrifying, of course, but the realization that I would be facing this battle alone, without the support of my own daughter, was even more devastating. I spent the next few days in a daze, going through the motions of preparing for my appointment. I packed a small bag, gathered my medical records, and made arrangements for a taxi. The thought of navigating the complexities of the hospital system, the daunting prospect of chemotherapy and radiation, all without Emma by my side, filled me with a sense of dread. Yet, amidst the fear and loneliness, a new resolve began to take root, a quiet determination, a steely glint of something that wasn't quite anger, but something colder, harder. I thought about my will, about the house I had worked so hard to maintain, the inheritance I had carefully planned to leave to Emma. A faint, almost imperceptible smile played on my lips. Perhaps it was time to rethink my plans. Perhaps there were other, more deserving recipients for my legacy. The rain finally stopped on the morning of my appointment. As the taxi pulled away from the curb, I looked back at my house, a symbol of all I had built, all I had hoped to pass on. The sun broke through the clouds, casting a golden glow over the city. It was a new day, and I was ready to face it, alone but not defeated. I had a long road ahead, a difficult battle to fight, but I also had a secret, a plan, a small measure of comfort in the face of such profound betrayal. And that, for now, was enough. The sterile white walls of the genetic counselor's office seemed to amplify the echoing silence in my ears. I clutched the tissue in my lap, the thin paper a poor substitute for the hand I longed to hold Emma's hand. "So, Mrs. Parker, we can certainly reschedule this appointment," the counselor said gently, her voice a calm ripple in the otherwise still air. I managed a weak smile. "It's all right, dear. I understand things come up," I lied. It wasn't all right. Emma had promised to be here, promised to be by my side as I navigated this terrifying new terrain of genetic testing, a direct consequence of my recent stage 3 cancer diagnosis. "She's got a very important presentation at work," I explained, the excuse tasting like ash in my mouth. "Couldn't reschedule," I added, the words barely a whisper. The counselor nodded sympathetically. "Well, we can certainly go over some of the basics with you now, and then cover everything in detail when your daughter is able to join us." I nodded, grateful for her kindness, but a cold knot of disappointment tightened in my chest. This was important. This was about understanding my cancer, about understanding what the future might hold. And I was facing it alone. "I appreciate that," I told her, my voice cracking slightly. I tried to focus on the information the counselor was sharing, but the words seemed to swim in front of me, blurring into meaningless phrases. All I could think about was Emma effortlessly commanding a boardroom, while I sat here, grappling with the potential implications of a faulty gene. Essentially, the counselor explained, we're looking for specific mutations that might indicate an increased risk of certain cancers, and also potentially inform treatment options. "I see," I murmured, trying to sound engaged, but the hollowness of the room seemed to press in on me. The empty chair beside me mocked me, a stark reminder of Emma's absence. The genetic counselor continued explaining the process, detailing the types of tests available and the potential outcomes. "It's a lot to take in, I know," she said, sensing my distraction. "Yes," I agreed, rubbing my temples. "It is." More than she knew, it wasn't just the medical jargon, the complex scientific terms. It was the weight of everything, the fear, the uncertainty, the gnawing loneliness. "We can send you home with some brochures," the counselor offered, "and you can review them with your daughter when she has time." The phrase "when she has time" stung. Would she ever have time for me? For this? For her mother, facing the fight of her life alone? "Thank you," I managed to say, forcing a smile. "That would be helpful." As the counselor gathered the pamphlets, I gazed out the window at the bustling city below. People hurried along the sidewalks, absorbed in their own worlds, oblivious to the quiet battle being waged inside this sterile office. A sudden wave of exhaustion washed over me. I was tired of fighting, tired of pretending everything was okay, tired of being strong. "Is everything all right, Mrs. Parker?" the counselor asked, her voice laced with concern. "Just a bit overwhelmed," I admitted, my voice barely a whisper. "It's a lot." The counselor nodded sympathetically. "I understand. It's important to have a strong support system during this time. Make sure you lean on your loved ones." A bitter laugh escaped my lips before I could stop it. "My daughter is very busy," I said, the words laced with a sarcasm I hadn't intended. The counselor's brow furrowed slightly. "Well, even busy people can make time for what's important," she said gently. "I'm sure your daughter loves you and wants to be here for you." I wanted to believe her. I really did. But the empty chair beside me, the missed appointment, the constant stream of excuses, all whispered a different story. As I left the counselor's office, the city lights seemed to blur into a kaleidoscope of meaningless color. The bustling streets, the cheerful chatter of passersby, all felt distant and unreal. I was adrift in a sea of uncertainty, clinging to the flimsy raft of hope, wondering if it would be enough to keep me afloat. I walked slowly, each step heavy with the weight of my diagnosis, the weight of my loneliness, the weight of my daughter's absence. Something shifted inside me as I walked. The initial shock and hurt began to harden into something colder, something sharper. A flicker of resolve ignited within me, a small flame in the vast darkness of my fear. I needed to face this. I needed to be strong, not for Emma, but for myself. I hailed a cab, sinking into the back seat, the soft leather a small comfort against the harsh reality of my situation. As the city lights whizzed by, I closed my eyes, letting the exhaustion wash over me. But beneath the fatigue, a new seed was taking root. A seed of quiet determination. A seed of something that looked a lot like planning. I needed to think. I needed to strategize. I needed to protect myself. And maybe, just maybe, I needed to find a way to make sure Emma understood the true cost of her absence. The thought, though unsettling, brought with it a strange sense of calm. It was a long road ahead, but for the first time since my diagnosis, I felt a glimmer of something other than fear. I felt a glimmer of control. The sterile chill of the radiation oncologist's office seemed to seep into my bones. "We'll reschedule for next week then, Lucille, doctor." Ramirez's voice, though kind, held a note of weary resignation. "It's important Emma understands the severity of this." "I'll try again," I said, the familiar tightness gripping my throat. This was the second appointment Emma had missed, this time for a soccer tournament Julian's nephew was playing in. A tournament. While I was fighting for my life, I clutched the appointment card in my hand, the crisp paper a stark contrast to the tremor running through me. Outside, the sun glinted off passing cars, the world continuing its relentless, indifferent rhythm. Inside, I felt adrift, a solitary vessel in a vast, empty sea. The diagnosis had been a blow, stage 3 breast cancer, but Emma's casual disregard felt like a deeper wound. The drive home was a blur. I remember turning the key in the ignition, the hum of the engine, the familiar route unwinding before me, but my mind was elsewhere, replaying snippets of conversations, searching for a sign, a moment, where things had gone so wrong. Had I been a bad mother? Had I somehow failed her? The house felt hollow, amplifying the silence. I wandered through the rooms, touching familiar objects, a framed photograph of Emma as a child, a hand-wear-upon blanket draped over the sofa, a stack of her old schoolbooks on a shelf. Each item was a tangible reminder of a past that now felt impossibly distant. I sank into the armchair by the window, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the room. Outside, children played in the street, their laughter echoing in the stillness. I watched them, a pang of longing in my chest. This was the life I had envisioned for Emma, a life filled with joy, family, and connection. But now the phone rang, jarring me from my reverie. It was Emma. "Mom," she began. Her voice rushed. "I'm so sorry I missed the appointment again." Things are just so crazy here. I understand, dear, I replied, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. Julian's parents are visiting, and there's just so much going on. Her voice trailed off, and I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my gut, that this wasn't about Julian's parents. It was about her life, her carefully constructed world, a world in which I no longer seemed to fit. "How are you feeling?" she asked, the question an afterthought. "The same," I said, my voice flat. "The doctor wants to start radiation as soon as possible." There was a pause, a silence pregnant with unspoken words. "Well, let me know when the next appointment is," Emma finally said. "I'll try to make it." Try. The word hung in the air, a testament to the chasm that had opened between us. The call ended, and the silence returned, heavier now, suffocating. I sat by the window, watching the shadows lengthen, the light fading, the world outside growing dim. I thought about the future, the treatments, the uncertainty, and I thought about Emma, her absence, her indifference. A strange calmness began to settle over me, a quiet resolve. I knew what I had to do. It wouldn't bring back the relationship I had lost. It wouldn't erase the pain, but it would give me a sense of control, a small measure of retribution. I picked up the phone and dialed my lawyer's number. "Mr. Davis," I said, my voice steady. "I need to make some changes to my will." There was a pause. "Of course, Mrs. Parker," he replied. "Tell me what you have in mind." I closed my eyes, the image of Emma's face flickering behind my eyelids. "I want to leave everything," I said, my voice barely a whisper, "to charity." The words hung in the air, a declaration of independence, a severance of ties. The house, the savings, the inheritance, everything I had worked for, everything I had planned to leave to Emma, would now go to a cause far removed from her world. It was a drastic step, a final act of defiance against the daughter who had abandoned me in my time of need. I wasn't sure if it was right, if it was just, but in that moment, it was the only thing that gave me a sense of peace, the only thing that felt like revenge. The lawyer cleared his throat. "Are you sure about this, Mrs. Parker?" he asked, his voice laced with concern. "Absolutely," I replied, my voice firm. "I'm sure." Outside, the last vestiges of daylight faded, leaving me alone in the gathering darkness. But for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel afraid. I felt resolved. The sterile smell of the oncology waiting room was starting to feel like home. Another Tuesday, another chemo session, and another missed call from Emma. "So sorry, Mom," her voicemail chirped. "Julian's parents are in town unexpectedly. Huge dinner tonight. Can't reschedule. Rain check on visiting hours." I sighed, deleting the message. This was the third rain check this month. My hand trembled as I reached for the lukewarm hospital coffee. Julian's parents. Always Julian's parents. Or Julian's work emergency. Or Emma's sudden migraine. Always something. The nurse called my name, a small kindness in the echoing indifference of the clinic. As I sat hooked to the foredrip, the cool liquid seeping into my veins, I thought back to Emma's childhood, piano recitals, soccer games, late-night study sessions. I was always there. Now, facing my own battle, she was nowhere to be found. The thought stung. sharper than the chemo drugs. Later that week, during a follow-up appointment with Dr. Ramirez, my phone buzzed. Emma. Mom, so sorry to bother you during your appointment, but could you possibly forward me that spa brochure? Julian and I are thinking of a weekend getaway. I stared at the screen, a cold knot forming in my stomach. A spa getaway, while I was here, hooked up to machines, fighting for every breath. I'll send it later, Emma, I managed, my voice tighter than I intended. I'm with the doctor. Oh, right. Later then, she replied, the call ending with a brisk click. Doctor Ramirez looked at me with concern. Everything all right, Lucille? Fine. I lied, forcing a smile. Just family matters. He nodded, his expression understanding. He knew. He saw the strain, the loneliness that clung to me like a shadow. He'd probably seen it 1,000 times before. The silent suffering of patients abandoned by the ones they loved most. That night, lying in bed, the exhaustion of the treatment weighing me down, I made a decision. The house, the inheritance, everything I'd worked for, everything I'd planned to leave to Emmett would all be reevaluated. I wouldn't be a victim. I wouldn't be discarded and forgotten. I would take control of what little control I had left. The next morning, I called my lawyer, Mr. Henderson. I need to make some changes to my will, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. He agreed to meet me the following day. I spent the rest of the day sorting through old photo albums, pictures of Emma as a baby, a toddler, a teenager. Each photo a painful reminder of a bond that seemed to be fraying, unraveling with each missed visit, each flimsy excuse. Meeting Mr. Henderson in his oak-paneled office, the seriousness of the situation settled upon me. Sunlight streamed through the large windows, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. I'm ready to discuss the changes, I said, my hands clasped tightly in my lap. Mr. Henderson adjusted his glasses, his gaze meeting mine. Very well, Lucille. Tell me what you have in mind. I took a deep breath, a quiet resolve hardening within me. I want to leave my entire estate to the ASPCA. His eyebrows rose in surprise. The animal shelter. Yes, I confirmed, a flicker of something I hadn't felt in weeks, satisfaction warming me from the inside. They appreciate unconditional love. Mr. Henderson remained silent for a moment, then nodded slowly. I understand. I'll prepare the necessary documents. Leaving his office, I felt a strange sense of peace. It wasn't the vindictive thrill I'd imagined. It was something quieter, deeper, a reclamation of my own worth, a refusal to be erased. The cool autumn air felt crisp against my skin, a reminder of the changing seasons. And as I walked, I realized that I, too, was changing. I was shedding the skin of the woman who waited by the phone, hoping for a call that never came. I was becoming someone new, someone stronger, someone who knew her own value, regardless of whether her daughter saw it or not. And as I hailed a cab, a thought, small but potent, took root. Maybe, just maybe, this was just the beginning. Rain lashed against the window pane, mirroring the tempest inside me. Each drop seemed to echo the hollow ache in my heart, a constant reminder of Emma's absence. She hadn't visited me once since I started chemotherapy. I'm so busy, Mom, she'd said on the phone, her voice tight with impatience. Julian needs me, and work is just crazy right now. I gripped the warm mug of tea, the heat a small comfort against the chill that seemed to have settled permanently in my bones. It wasn't just the chemo, it was the loneliness, the gnawing feeling of betrayal that kept me awake at night. I looked around my living room, at the photographs on the mantelpiece. Emma as a child, her gap-toothed grin radiating pure joy. Emma graduating high school, her arm linked with mine, her eyes bright with dreams of the future. Emma on her engagement day, radiant in Julian's embrace. Where had that girl gone? The girl who used to bring me wildflowers from the field behind our house, who used to sit with me for hours, just talking about everything and nothing. She's grown up, I whispered to the empty room, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. She has her own life now, but even as I said it, I knew it wasn't the whole truth. Growing up didn't mean abandoning your mother when she needed you most. It didn't mean ignoring her calls, making excuses, offering empty promises, of visits that never materialized. It didn't mean leaving her to face the terrifying reality of cancer alone. The chemo had been brutal. The nausea, the fatigue, the constant fear that gnawed at me, whispering doubts and uncertainties in the dark hours of the night. You're going to be okay, the doctors kept telling me. We caught it early. You have a good chance. But their words felt hollow without Emma's presence, without her hand in mine, without the reassurance of her love. What if I'm not okay? I had asked my oncologist during my last appointment. He had squeezed my hand and said, "We'll cross that bridge when we come to it." But that bridge loomed large in my mind, a dark and terrifying structure that I felt I was approaching all too quickly. I picked up a framed photo of Emma and me on a beach vacation, the two of us laughing, our hair windswept and salty. We'd spent hours collecting seashells, building sandcastles, and chasing the retreating waves. Remember that time we went to the beach? Mom, Emma had asked me a few weeks ago, her voice strained through the phone line. That was the best vacation ever. Yes, it was, I'd replied, a lump forming in my throat. I wish we could do it again someday. Me too, she'd said quickly. Maybe next year. But next year felt like a lifetime away. And with each passing day, the possibility of a next year seemed to diminish, to fade into the realm of wishful thinking. I closed my eyes. The image of Emma's smiling face burned into my memory. It was a memory I clung to, a precious fragment of a past that now seemed so distant, so irrevocably lost. "I miss you," I whispered, my voice thick with unshed tears. "I miss you so much." The silence that followed was deafening, punctuated only by the relentless drumming of the rain against the window. It was in that silence, in the depths of my loneliness, that a seed of resolve began to take root. A small, hard kernel of determination that whispered a different kind of future. A future where I wasn't waiting for Emma's love and attention. A future where I wasn't defined by her absence. "She's made her choice," I murmured, the words barely audible above the storm raging outside. And now, so have I. The thought, though painful, brought with it a strange sense of peace, a quiet strength that I hadn't felt in a long time. I opened my eyes and looked around the room again, this time with a new clarity. This house, filled with memories of Emma's childhood, had become a symbol of my disappointment, a constant reminder of what I had lost. But it was also something I still possessed, something I could control. And in that control, I found a flicker of hope, a glimmer of a path forward. I've worked hard for everything I have, I said to myself, my voice gaining strength with each word. I built this life, brick by brick, and I won't let her indifference diminish it. I rose from the sofa and walked over to the desk in the corner of the room. I opened the drawer and pulled out a thick folder, the label will and testament staring back at me in stark black letters. For a long time, I'd hesitated to open it, to confront the reality of my mortality. But now, the fear had been replaced by a sense of purpose, a quiet resolve to take control of my own narrative. It's time, I said, my voice steady and clear. It's time to rewrite the ending. I sat down at the desk, the rain still drumming a steady rhythm against the glass. With trembling hands, I opened the folder and began to read. The words blurred before my eyes, a jumble of legal jargon that seemed to dance and swirl on the page. But as I read, a new vision began to form in my mind, a vision of a future where I was no longer defined by Emma's absence, but by my own strength and resilience. She may have forgotten me, I whispered, my voice filled with a newfound conviction, but I won't forget myself. I picked up a pen and, with a steady hand, began to cross out sections of the document, making changes, adding new clauses, rewriting the story of my legacy. The rain continued to fall, washing away the old hurts, cleansing the slate, making way for a new beginning, and as I wrote, a sense of peace settled over me, a quiet satisfaction that came from knowing that I was finally taking control of my own destiny. The house, once a symbol of my loneliness, now felt like a sanctuary, a place where I could rebuild my life, brick by brick, on my own terms. I had a plan now, a secret that I would carry with me, a silent promise to myself, and in that secret, I found a strength I never knew I possessed. The game, I realized, was far from over. Rain lashed against the window pane, mimicking the tempest inside me. Each drop felt like a tiny hammer blow, chipping away at the fragile shell I'd become. My hand, shaky from the latest round of chemo, trembled as I lifted the phone. Mr. Henderson, it's Lucille Parker. I need to make some changes to my will. My voice was thin, barely a whisper. I swallowed hard, the lump in my throat constricting my airway. Yes, I understand implications. I managed, my voice cracking. I'm sure. The silence stretched, each tick of the grandfather clock in the hall echoing the hollow ache in my chest. It was done. The words were spoken. The decision made. Emma wouldn't receive a single penny. I hung up the phone, the weight of my decision settling heavily on my shoulders. Was this right? Was this fair? A wave of nausea washed over me, not from the chemo this time, but from the sheer emotional turmoil. I closed my eyes, images of Emma as a child flooding my mind, her gap-toothed grin, the way she used to clutch my hand as we crossed the street, the countless hours I'd spent reading her bedtime stories. Had all of that meant nothing? Had I somehow failed her? Or had she failed me? I pulled myself up from the sofa, my legs weak and unsteady. The house felt colder now, emptier. It was a beautiful home, filled with memories, a lifetime of carefully curated furniture. and artwork. I'd always envisioned Emma inheriting it, creating her own memories within these walls. Now, the thought felt like a bitter pill. What's the point? I murmured to the empty room, my voice hollow. Who am I saving it for? I wandered through the silent rooms, touching the smooth surface of the antique dining table, the worn leather of my favorite armchair. Each object held a story, a moment in time. These things were more than just possessions. They were pieces of my life, my identity. And now I was giving them away, not to Emma, the daughter I had raised and loved, but to strangers. The thought struck me with renewed force. I couldn't simply let everything go to some faceless charity. There had to be another way, a way to ensure that my legacy wasn't just erased, a way to make something meaningful out of this betrayal. I stopped in front of the large bay window overlooking the garden. The rain had eased, and a sliver of sunlight peeked through the clouds, illuminating the vibrant colors of the late blooming roses. An idea began to form, a flicker of hope in the darkness. What if, instead of letting my legacy dissipate, I used it to build something new, something that would benefit others, something that would make a real difference in the world? I returned to the phone, my hand no longer trembling. This time, my voice was stronger, clearer. Mr. Henderson, I need to make another change. I've been thinking about a foundation, the Lucille Parker Foundation for Cancer Support. Yes, I want to leave everything to it. I paused, a small smile playing on my lips. I want to help others who are going through what I'm going through, those who don't have the support they need, those who are alone. The details unfolded quickly. I would specify everything, from the types of support offered to the eligibility criteria. I would ensure that no one, no matter their circumstances, would have to face the terror of cancer alone. It would be a place of comfort, of hope, a beacon of light in the darkness. As I hung up the phone, a sense of peace settled over me. It wasn't the same peace I had felt before, when I believed Emma would carry on my legacy. This was something different, something stronger, something forged in the fires of adversity. I had taken Emma's rejection and transformed it into something positive, something meaningful. I had taken my pain and turned it into purpose. The house no longer felt empty. It felt full, full of the promise of a new beginning, a new legacy. Emma might have chosen to abandon me in my time of need, but I would not let her abandonment define me. I would rise above it. I would create something beautiful from the ashes of my disappointment. I would find my own way to heal, to thrive, to leave my mark on the world. And perhaps, just perhaps, that would be the greatest revenge of all. The rain had stopped completely now, and a rainbow arced across the sky, a vibrant testament to the resilience of the human spirit. I looked out at the world, a newfound strength coursing through my veins. I wasn't sure what the future held, but I knew one thing for certain. I was ready to face it on my own terms. I picked up a small framed photo of Emma and Julian, taken at their engagement party. I looked at it for a long moment, a complex mix of emotions swirling within me. Then, quietly, I placed it face down on the table. There was still work to be done. The crisp, sterile air of Mr. Henderson's office felt miles away from the antiseptic sting of the chemo ward. I smoothed down my skirt, the fabric unfamiliar after weeks of sweatpants and hospital gowns. I'm ready to sign, I told him, my voice stronger than I expected. He nodded, adjusting his glasses. The legal document spread out before us like a battlefield map. Are you absolutely certain about this, Mrs. Parker? This version of the will leaves your daughter, Emma, with nothing. He paused, his pen hovering over the signature line. I understand your disappointment, but this is a significant decision. Disappointment doesn't even begin to cover it, I replied, a flicker of bitterness lacing my words. Emma made her choices. She chose her career, her fiancé Julian, her social life anything, and everything over supporting her mother during one of the most difficult times in my life. Mr. Henderson remained silent, his expression neutral, the professional mask of a lawyer who'd heard countless family dramas unfold in his office. I spent weeks in that hospital, fighting for every breath, and she couldn't even be bothered to return my calls. I continued, my voice trembling slightly. She missed every single chemo appointment, every doctor's visit. Julian brought flowers once, but he was clearly just doing it out of obligation. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. Emma claims she's too busy for her own mother. Well, then she'll be too busy to inherit anything from me. My hand, still slightly shaky from the chemo, reached for the pen. Where do I sign? Mr. Henderson indicated the dotted line, his gaze meeting mine for a fleeting moment before returning to the document. As I signed my name, a strange sense of calm washed over me. This wasn't about spite. It was about reclaiming control. Emma had taken so much from me, my time, my energy, my hope without a second thought. This small act of defiance was my way of taking something back. This will ensures that your entire estate, including your house and all assets, will be bequeathed to the Coastal Wildlife Preservation Society, Mr. Henderson confirmed, his voice even. I nodded, a small smile playing on my lips. The irony wasn't lost on me. Emma, with her designer handbags and luxury vacations, wouldn't get a cent. Instead, my money would go towards protecting the delicate ecosystem of the coastline I'd always loved, a place that had brought me solace during my darkest days. That's correct, I affirmed. The coastlanites where I found peace these past few months, walking along the beach, feeling the ocean breeze. It's where I went when I needed to escape the silence of my empty house, waiting for a phone call that never came. My voice cracked slightly, but I pushed through. Emma can have her fancy city life. I'll leave my legacy to something that actually matters. Mr. Henderson collected the signed documents, his movements precise and efficient. Very well, Mrs. Parker. Everything is finalized. I'll ensure these are filed securely. He extended his hand, and I shook it, our palms briefly connecting. His touch felt cool and impersonal, a stark contrast to the burning anger that had fueled me for so long. Now, in its place, was a quiet sense of satisfaction. As I left the office, stepping back into the bustling city streets, I felt a sense of lightness I hadn't experienced in months. The weight of Emma's betrayal hadn't vanished entirely, but it no longer felt crushing. I had taken back control, rewritten the narrative, and in doing so, I had found a small measure of peace. The next step, well, that was going to be interesting. My last checkup is next week. They say the prognosis is good, that the cancer is in remission. I wonder how Emma will react when she sees me, not frail and weakened, but vibrant and alive, ready to enjoy the life she so carelessly dismissed, ready to enjoy a life free from the burden of expectations, free from the disappointment of a daughter who chose to be absent. I have plans for myself, plans that don't involve Emma, plans that involve the beach house I'm going to buy with the money I saved, the one overlooking the very coastline I bequeathed to the Preservation Society. She can keep her city penthouse. I'll have the ocean and the quiet satisfaction of knowing she gets absolutely nothing. Nothing at all. The crisp November air nipped at my cheeks as I watched from afar. Not really, of course. I was gone. But if there's any truth to the whispers of spirits lingering, I was definitely lingering. I wanted to see Emma's face. I wanted to see the moment she realized the depth of her mistake. It was the day the reading of my will was scheduled, held in the very living room where she had once told me, "Mom, you're being dramatic. It's just chemo. Julian and I are busy." The lawyer, Mr. Henderson, a kind man who'd handled my affairs for years, stood before her, Julian, and a handful of distant relatives. Emma looked expectant, a slight smile playing on her lips. She probably thought she was about to inherit everything: the house, my investments, everything I'd worked my entire life for. Mr. Henderson cleared his throat. "Before we begin," he started, his voice echoing slightly in the now too large room, "I want to express my condolences to the family of Lucille Parker. She was a remarkable woman." Emma nodded, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. I almost laughed. "Now, Mr. Henderson continued, adjusting his glasses, let's proceed with the reading of the will." He droned through the preliminary legalese, the kind that makes your eyes glaze over even if you're alive, and well, let alone watching from wherever I was watching from. Then he got to the bequests, a small sum to a local animal shelter, another to my alma mater. Emma shifted in her seat, impatience flickering across her face. I could almost hear her thinking, "Get on with it already." And finally, Mr. Henderson said, pausing for dramatic effect, which, I must admit, I would have appreciated in life, "To my daughter, Emma Parker." Emma sat up straighter, her smile returning. This was it, the moment she'd been waiting for. "I leave the sum of $1. The silence that followed was thick enough to cut with a knife. Emma's jaw dropped. "What?" she sputtered. $1. That is a mistake, right?" She looked wildly at Julian, then back at Mr. Henderson. Julian, ever the pragmatist, simply frowned, his eyes narrowing. "There must be some kind of error," Emma insisted, her voice rising. "I'm her only child. This can't be right." Mr. Henderson, bless his heart, remained calm. "I assure you, Miss Parker," he said gently, "there is no mistake. The will is quite clear. Your mother left specific instructions." He shuffled some papers. "She also left a letter for you, to be read after the disbursement of the will." Emma practically snatched the letter from his hands. Her hands trembled as she unfolded the single sheet of paper. I watched her scan the lines, her face draining of color with each word. It was a short letter, but it contained everything I hadn't been able to say to her while I was alive. "My dearest Emma," the letter began, and I could hear my own voice in my head as she read. each word laced with the bittersweet sting of a mother's love and disappointment. I spent my life building a future for you, a future I hoped you would share with me. But in my greatest time of need, you were absent. You chose your career, your social life, even your fiance's golf game over being there for me. You chose to abandon me when I needed you most. So now, I choose to leave you with a symbolic inheritance, a reflection of the value you placed on our relationship. $1. I hope this serves as a reminder that some things, like love and support, are worth far more than any monetary inheritance. The house and the remainder of my estate will go to the St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, where hopefully other mothers won't have to face their battles alone. Emma crumpled the letter in her fist, tears streaming down her face. She looked up at Mr. Henderson, her voice choked with emotion. But the house, it's worth millions, yes, Miss Parker, Mr. Henderson replied, his voice soft. Your mother was very generous. He gathered his papers. If you'll excuse me, I have other matters to attend to. He gave a polite nod and left the room, leaving Emma standing there amidst the echoes of my final words. In the house that was no longer hers, Julian placed a hand on her arm, his expression unreadable. I wondered what he was thinking. Perhaps he was calculating how much this unexpected turn of events would affect his own future. For me, there was a strange sense of peace. It wasn't joy, not exactly. It was something else entirely. A sense of closure, maybe. A quiet, bittersweet satisfaction. I finally had the last word, and that, I realized, was all I ever truly wanted. The silence of the empty house pressed in, a silence broken only by Emma's muffled sobs. I turned away then, this image of her tear-stained face imprinted in my memory. It was time to let go.